Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Hello, I hope you're well. It's me again, Martin Ballard, with episode 49 of this podcast series, which looks at all aspects of pantomime and, of course, the work of Imagine Theatre.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
Now, if you've missed any of the previous episodes, of course, you can still listen to them. We've had some fabulous guests from the Imagine Theatre headquarters team to performers and backstage members of the teams at the various Imagine shows. We talked about how pantomime is produced, its history, and its future. And there are many more episodes to come as well from one of the UK's biggest producers of pantomime and children's theatre. In the last episode, I was joined by Imagine's Managing Director Steve Bowden and his wife, Business and Marketing Director Sarah Bowden. This time, as we approach the UK Pantomime Association annual awards event, we're going to take a look at the association itself with three of the trustees. Association Chair, Senior Curator of Modern and Contemporary Performance at the Victoria and Albert Museum and founder of Panto Day, Simon Sladen.
Hello.
The Vice Chair and founder of the awards, Sam Munday-Webb.
Hello.
And the Treasurer, who's worked in all areas of the arts and sport, from Thames Television to the Arts Council, Manchester United to the Lawn Tennis Association, Nick Humby.
Hello.
Welcome, first of all, everybody. Let's set the scene, really, shall we? Simon, first of all, tell us a little bit about the association and its structure.
We founded the UK Pantomime Association in 2021, and the association itself is actually a registered charity with a number of pillars that we take as very important to the work that we do. At our heart is that we explore, share and celebrate pantomime. And we do that by this sort of tripartite of investigating the genre's rich past, engaging with contemporary practice, and as a result, hopefully inspiring the future. As we know, the genre evolves and we're there to hopefully be part of that dialogue and discourse. So we do that and achieve that really through four things. One is by celebrating excellence through the awards, which we'll speak about in a bit, by championing pantomime as an important British art form, inspiring through workshops, talks, special events, and curating, I suppose, in essence, which we have as our online presence, which we hope will grow into this sort of hub for panto practice, history, traditions and culture. So we're there as an organisation, as an association, to help encourage engagement and celebrate what we know is such a significant aspect of British culture and theatrical culture, which I think many people would also agree has not always had the most positive light shone on it, when actually it's one of the most richest heritage and complex forms of theatre that exists.
Well, we've spoken a couple of times on this podcast series, Simon, so we know about your passion, or I should say maybe obsession with pantomime. But Sam, what about you? Where did your love of panto come from?
I think my real passion started when I was a child, and I was always taken to the Richmond Panto by my grandma. And I vividly remember a production with Chris Jarvis and Bonnie Langford, and those pantomimes stuck in my mind. And as I continued and engaged in community theatre arts, pantomime was a big aspect. In fact, I directed my first pantomime with a budget of about £20,000 when I was 16, and I was entrusted in that. So that was quite exciting. And then as I progressed through uni, my dissertation looked at the participatory element of pantomime and what role the audience play in that. And then I've gone on to direct and write quite a few pantos myself.
And you've seen thousands of them by now, haven't you? You never tire of it.
I don't think you can. I think, it's an art form which is evolving, not just year on year, but day on day. As a creative who's been involved in a pantomime, if you think about, a Petri dish and you put something in it and it grows and it grows, and that's what happens creatively, but that also happens year on year. And there's no art form that so wonderfully represents the communities which they're playing to as pantomime.
And Nick, what about you? We mentioned the Richmond Theatre there. You should know all about that. You're a trustee there these days, aren't you? But where did your love of panto come from?
Well, I think it's been a part of my life since I was a young child. My parents were amateur dramatic directors and performers. I started doing backstage work in pantomime in Romsey with them and got my love of it. They used to take us to obviously see shows. We brought our kids up to see pantomime. I was fortunate to be on the Ambassador Theatre Group board when we founded the first family entertainment. So I saw a lot of pantomime then. And since I stopped working and just spend my time in the world of theatre as a volunteer, just in loving, celebrating the art, I have been privileged to see many, many pantomimes around the country. As part of this awards and the predecessor form of the awards, I've traveled all over the country seeing shows. So it's so exciting to celebrate and see the variation, the regional variations of pantomime. If you see Elaine C. Smith up in Glasgow, or Kevin Johns down in Swansea, or Edward Rowe down in Truro, Beric Kaler in York. I mean, they're pantomimes, but they're all so different because they reflect the local communities. And I've been very privileged to see those shows and enjoy the art form, but also the variation, the local variations that make it so exciting for those communities.
The UK Pantomime Association has an organising board, and we've mentioned that already, Simon, as chairman of this. Just give us an idea of who the rest of the board members are, because they have a very diverse range of specialist backgrounds, don't they?
Yeah, we're very lucky to have a wonderful board of trustees, which it's an absolute privilege to be chair of. Sam is one of my vice chairs, the other a person very well known within the industry, much respected for the outstanding tenure that she had at Hackney Empire. Susie McKenna is our other vice chair. We've got people like Chris Jarvis is one of our trustees, Linda John Pierre, people that have been involved with the industry, been on the stage, writing for the industry. Maybe they're active now. Laura Taylor, one of Imagine's team, is one of our trustees. Robert Marsden, who's one of the professors at the University of Staffordshire, who helped found the first MA in contemporary pantomime practice. Alex Jackson, a wonderful director, writer, graphic designer, who's very active in the field. So we have a lot of expertise in and amongst the trustees. And of course, we have a wonderful president in Christopher Biggins, who really encapsulates and embodies pantomime in all its ways. So we like to think that as a group of trustees, we have a good span of that landscape of on stage, backstage, producing, the creative roles, the technical roles, the worlds of academia, the worlds of museums, the worlds of cultural heritage, to really help us achieving those aims and objectives. And it is absolutely, we as I said, we were founded in 21. It was quite a road to get to there in terms of organisation and getting authorization from the Charities Committee. But we're incredibly proud of what we achieved. And, we're only in our second year, and we're just going to keep growing.
Now, Sam, the four aims which we mentioned briefly are to celebrate excellence through the Pantomime Awards, of course, which we'll talk about in a moment's time. And Simon mentioned providing a hub, if you like, for pantomime practice, history, traditions and culture and so on. And that's really important, isn't it? Because Panto has always and will continue to evolve, but there are certain traditions and certain parts of it, history, which it's very important to maintain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think no other art form evolves in the way that Panto does and responds to the cultural, the political landscape that, we see before us. And in fact, I know I mentioned that, shows evolve, but I have been involved in productions where the show on one night will be different to the show next night, because you are taking an artistic or creative decision to respond to something that's happened in the news. But you're right, in terms of many of the traditions that kind of are embedded in the practice are staples. And yes, we love to see them, but we also are really interested in when there's, fascinating, innovative takes on those traditions, and that helps them to evolve and excite the audiences.
It was fascinating. I'm sure you've all seen the touring version of Mother Goose with Sir Ian McKellen and John Bishop, but John Bishop comes out to talk to the audience before the show and talks about some of those traditions, which he was unaware of until he'd done this pantomime. Sir Ian McKellen explained to him, the good fairy comes on stage right, the bad fairy stage left, and all that sort of stuff. And that's the sort of thing we're talking about, passing on that tradition. I have to say, Nick, as well as all the other things that you've done in the past, you are very much involved with NODA. And it's important to say that we talk about professional pantomime all the time, but amateur pantomimes are thriving, aren't they?
Yeah, they're absolutely key part of the Amateur Society's annual programming. Nearly every society will do a Christmas pantomime or a January pantomime. There are some very good scripts out there that they can get in from people like Ben Crocker and people like that, and it's a fun experience. And when I have 13 societies that I look after in East Berkshire, and I go and visit them and see their shows, and then supply them with a show report, and then obviously nominate various aspects for the NODA Awards, which are done on a district, regional, and national basis. But the main thing is you just have a strong sense of a community. These are amateur societies, are communities of people who share a love of performing and staging shows, and it's a joy, and it's part of the same thing, really, because I'm sure those people also will be the audiences in professional shows, and the young ensembles who get involved in amateur theatres, they are the ones who perhaps will progress into professional junior ensembles. So it's all part, I think, of the same cycle of progression that we see people getting sucked into the genre of pantomime.
And it's a key theme we talk about all the time, isn't it, with community? Every panto that works particularly well reflects its community. And that's one of the reasons why communities love to get involved with their own amateur productions as well.
Yeah.
Now, there are all sorts of events and so on that have been planned and outlined, from workshops, talks, and all sorts of special events, Simon. But a recent symposium, and you mentioned Dr. Robert Marsden, a symposium was held recently with Staffordshire University. Tell me what that was all about and what it achieved.
Yeah, so myself, along with Richard Cheshire, as co-conveners of that, and Richard runs the MA in Contemporary Pantomime Practice at Staffordshire University and is a very experienced practitioner himself. I do also want to do a quick shout out, because I very, very terribly forgot to mention David Lloyd-Jones, one of our other wonderful trustees. So we've got them all. We've got them all now, and you can absolutely find out more on, always give it a plug, pantomimeassociation.co.uk, and follow us on social media. So one of the things that we want to do is to start investigating pantomime and to engaging it in a level that perhaps it hasn't had as much of in the past. So this was the first of what we'll hope will be an annual symposium to really do a sort of state of the genre style discussion. And we decided for the first year to really look at 3 areas. One, creating pantomime today. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities? How might things have changed? What are we looking at? What are we talking about? Also, what might inform future symposia? Then we wanted to look at the performers' perspective. So the first panel looked at creatives, the second looked at performers. How might that have changed over career, or if you've been new to pantomime, mentioning just earlier this notion of inheriting traditions, what happens when there might not necessarily be anybody in that team to inherit them from? And is that an example of this creative cauldron that can occur? Because pantomime has always taken from dominant forms of the day and things that have been popular, which is one of the reasons it can evolve. And then the last panel, we looked at a very hot topic today, inclusivity and representation on the contemporary pantomime stage, hearing about some best practice that's occurring across the section and things that we can all do to bring that, I suppose, to a more centered aspect of when we're thinking about producing, directing, writing. So it was a really, really encouraging, honest, discursive day, and one that we hope will keep growing. Already lots of ideas coming out of it about perhaps future ideas and opportunities. One of the areas we didn't get to discuss in too much depth was design, but we're going to be doing, the UKPA is going to be doing a special lecture with the Society for Theatre Research and Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in July, just focusing on design. And we're so privileged because we've had such support from the industry and have had amazing practitioners speaking and sharing their knowledge and expertise and insight in a way that I think we never thought was necessarily going to be possible. Everyone's so busy, everybody's busy throughout the year. Pantomime, as we know, is not just something that happens at Christmas. And yet we are overwhelmed with the support and enthusiasm to make those steps forward, to engage and to come together as a really strong industry to champion pantomime, because that's what we're all about, the positive promotion of pantomime, to inspire and to encourage others to engage in it. because we're also passionate, and we hope that that will also be something that others will be interested and want to get involved in as well.
And like all theatre, pantomime thrives when it's totally inclusive, and that's the aim of every, or should be the aim of every theatrical production, whether it's pantomime or not. Diversity is important as well, and we've spoken on the podcast series previously about the drag panto that Imagine did a couple of years ago, and Nick, you've seen evidence recently of how this is evolving down at the Hayes Beck Theatre.
Yes, it was a really fascinating. I'd never been to the Beck Theatre in Hayes before, but I met Stephen Sargent, who's the venue director there, only yesterday actually, and we were talking about how he, when he joined that organization, recognized there was a very diverse local community and was quite keen, I think, working with Imagine to bring that into the pantomime. And so this year's Cinderella with Pal Patel had a Bollywood song in it, and the very diverse audience of school kids that I sat with were absolutely enthralled and excited by seeing something which I'd never seen on a pantomime stage before. And I thought it was an incredibly great example of how the venue and the producers work together to adapt a title to reflect the local community, to engage them and inspire them, I think, about how exciting live entertainment is. It was tremendous. I really enjoyed the moment.
Absolutely perfect for panto, because anybody who's ever seen Bollywood dance or any Bollywood films will know how bright, colourful, exuberant, larger than life, everything that panto is. So it's a perfect fit, isn't it?
It was fantastic. And I mean, I think it's part of one of the real joys. We sometimes debate this: should we do schools productions and relaxed performances in our judging process? But I think both relaxed performances and schools performances are absolutely an essential part of the pantomime scene. And there's a real joy to seeing people in the venue, perhaps for the first time, experiencing those shows. And I hope that they get the bug and return like I do time and time again.
Well, one of the first key aims that we mentioned was to celebrate excellence, particularly through the annual Pantomime Awards. And Sam, this was your idea initially, and I mean, it's grown, hasn't it, incredibly since the very first awards. Tell us a bit about those, where the idea came from, and what you hope to get from it.
I mean, the idea actually stems from something about 17 years ago that I just had this gripe, really, that Panto wasn't celebrated in the same way that other theatre, platforms were. For example, the Olivier's, Watson Stage Awards, Panto wasn't getting a look in. And I worked for some time to try and get the voice of pantomime heard. I really felt it needed a platform to be celebrated. To cut a long story short, there was a previous iteration of the awards, and I was very grateful of the team that started that in its previous iteration. The pandemic gave us some time to kind of take stock of where the awards were at and what they needed to do. And what I essentially wanted to do was to create a platform, indeed, with it aligned to the organisation, which would celebrate and essentially do everything we're doing, but with a charitable aim. And that's really where the current UK association was born out of, taking the kind of the same notion of awarding excellence, but giving it greater governance and transparency, and ensuring that the art form can continue to be celebrated. And from its very humble beginnings, to think, only 6 years ago it was a very, very small thing, and now with the UK Pantomime Association, we are in the Trafalgar Theatre in London's West End with a glitzy ceremony, and we are at capacity. People really, really want to be there, and I think that's absolutely where we wanted the awards to be, which is really special.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, Sam? I think that first ceremony was about 20 of us in the theatre cafe, wasn't it? And here there'll be 600 people crammed into the Trafalgar Theatre this April. Amazing.
Nick, it's a bit of a logistical nightmare, though, isn't it, to organise? Because, I mean, think how many judges there are, how many shows they have to see. And I think there are more categories than there have ever been as well.
Yeah, so it is a fairly time-consuming effort. And we've got to thank all the venues and all the producers out there who respond to my emails and supply tickets. We had 64 judges visiting 243 venues and submitting 719 reports on those shows, and that's formed the basis of the nominations which we announced. And it's quite a process booking them all in. There are obviously always problems with shows getting cancelled and illnesses and train strikes, which just add to the the administrative headache of it. But we got there. We like to get 3 judges to every show so that when the nominations are looked at, we've got a good basis on which to make the assessments. And we've got, I think, a very interesting and diverse panel of judges with a huge range of experience, dames and theatre directors and various people who've spent their life involved or watching pantomime. So we've got a very interesting group of judges, and their expertise is also all supplied for free. They all travel at their own expense and submit their reports. And their only reward is to be there on the night to see the final nominations. But it's a fantastic collaborative process between venues, producers, judges to make it all happen.
So, Sam, are there any surprises in store for this year's awards ceremony? Because it was a fabulous event last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. It's the one time, because obviously everyone's working, that the whole community can get together and socialise and enjoy a night of theatre and celebration together. And that's really what it's about. It's about celebrating each other and who we are as a community. I'm producing this year's awards, as I did last year, and there are some surprises. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention them yet, but anyone who's coming will absolutely love all the performances we've got in store for this year. And of course, with Biggins presenting, he always manages to pitch the comedy perfectly for the audience throughout the night.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew you wouldn't tell us what the surprises were, but I thought I'd ask anyway, just to see what you came out with.
Producer can't reveal his secrets, but it's gonna be very special. I can honestly say that it's gonna be a very special evening.
I guess you must always be on the lookout for new judges and so on. How does anybody who's interested in getting involved get in contact with you?
The program is certainly going to instruct us how to do it, and we'll put it on our website how to apply to be a judge. We'll probably do a call later on in the spring, and then I think Sam and David normally interview people to get the range of experience. I think the other key area where we need support if we really are going to grow this and make it bigger and better is from our sponsors and donations. And we should give a shout out to our excellent sponsors this year. We've obviously got Butlins as our headline sponsor again this year. We've got Trafalgar Entertainment Group and Stagecoach have been a great supporter and obviously making the venue available for us, including using the Jersey Boys stage again. Staffordshire University are again our sponsors and great supporters. Howden Insurance have come in this year. Our insurance brokers are going to sponsor us. Santa himself is going to turn up. Production Light and Sound and Breckman, the accountants, are all sponsors of us, and they're the people that enable us to put on the show that we can. The more we can raise the profile, the more we can raise the money, the more we can both invest in the show and perhaps a bigger venue eventually, but also in all the other activities that Simon was outlining at the beginning. So, we made a fantastic first 2 years, but we've got to keep working very hard to grow the finances in order to grow the things we can get involved in and influence.
Martin, there you managed to get a little piece, a little nugget of the ceremony out of us. Santa himself will be there. So you managed to get an exclusive.
Oh, was that a secret? Was it? I'm sorry.
No, I don't think so, Nick. It's wonderful. Christmas magic always going to be there. It's going to be there too, which is great. And our sites are, who knows, maybe the Palladium one day.
The difference this year to last year is already extraordinary. I mean, we've invested in some press and PR and support this year, and I think that's making a huge difference in the exposure we're getting, which I'm very grateful to the people who are helping us do that, because that's critical. The demand for tickets is huge. Every time I put a few spare tickets on sale to the public, they're selling out. Most producers are asking for more tickets to buy. We are going to be very full, and I'm working very hard to sort the logistics of how we get everybody in the right places. But it's exciting to have that challenge. It shows that last year's was appreciated by everybody who went, and there's a real appetite for attending.
We can't wait for this year, I can tell you that. Simon, we've spoken in the past about the future of pantomime. It has to evolve. We've discussed this many times. What role do you see the association having in terms of that evolution of pantomime now?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's one actually that the trustees discuss quite a lot. The UKPA are not producers. We don't produce pantomime. People naturally within their own creative practice do help create pantomime. But we're there really as a body to help support, to help encourage and engage in discussions, to help host those things. And, we speak constantly to people within the industry about, what can we do? How can we help? Is it about having more discussions about certain presentations of titles, or actually do we need more statistical data to help us inform some of those decisions, or help us speak more to, in certain ways about things? We obviously want to foster a really great research community, because that's one of the ways to naturally share practice and share excellence, and also make sure that pantomime is securely and strongly there on the historical record to represent and reflect that wonderful practice that there is. And so I think the future for us, we are absolutely going to be a body of people and of practice that helps make us meet those aims and objectives. But we're always very willing to hear from people about how they feel the UKPA can best serve and work with. I mean, I like to think we're ambassadors for and of the genre. So that role will certainly evolve, and we've seen that already over the first 2 years, particularly with the awards, with the symposium, with the post-show discussions, with the lectures and things we're doing. But we'd love to hear from everybody. And another thing that we did in response was create a reading and research list on the website from students who are going to their supervisors. I want to research pantomime, and they're saying, we don't know if there's much out there. Well, there is a good amount, and you can find all of that on our website as well. So we're really a hub and a creative cauldron and an environment for discussion and celebration.
No doubt, Sam. Panto has a bright future, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many people that would work hard year on year to make it what it is. And there's so many challenges that we're facing financially, but people are still coming to see pantomime. It's the one thing that people will still come to see. I was speaking to a producer the other day that said, they're comparing their box office returns to 2019, but their box office returns are up. And if you're going to treat a family at Christmas, you want to give them an experience, and panto is the way to do that. So it's the time that the family come together, and it is often the shows that you remember because it's so euphoric. It does everything. It makes you laugh. It makes you cry at the right moment. It's just such an incredible experience, or that community that you feel when you're part of the audience is something to behold.
Finally, Nick, it has a much bigger impact, of course, on the arts in general, because there are many theatres up and down the country that without panto would simply not survive. And in the financial challenging times that we have at the moment, that's a very big challenge, isn't it? Not just for producers, but for venues as well.
Yes, I mean, as a finance person all my life, sustainability of businesses is an absolutely critical feature of business life. And so many venues depend on a successful 4 or 5 week pantomime run to really support everything they do the rest of the season. So it's incredibly important for them, both in terms of the finance it brings in, but then also the audience development and those people who make their first visit, or they bring their grandchildren to their first pantomime, and hopefully develop that association with that venue to come back again, not just the following year, but perhaps in between. So many life memories can be created. And I think back to my own son's first pantomime was as a 3-year-old in 2001 at Woking, where he was on stage meeting John Inman, and John asked him how old he was, and my son innocently said, "I'm 3," to a huge roar of laughter from the audience, because they recognized Inman's catchphrase, even though my son was simply stating his age. And so that for us is a family memory. And I'm sure there are many other people who have family memories from their first pantomime, their child's first visit to a pantomime, and the excitement. And another little anecdote was going to Hackney Empire, which is another fantastically diverse audience. And I sat next to a young mother and her daughter, and I said, "Is this her first pantomime?" And she said, "Yes." She thinks it's a cinema. She thinks she's going to watch a film. So there was a real magic when this young girl realized that this was live entertainment. This was people on stage for her. And those are the magic moments, I think, that make pantomime such a key part of our lives.
What a lovely way to end the episode. Simon, Nick, and Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it for another episode. But as I said at the beginning of this one, there are many more fabulous guests still to come. Next time, we'll have a special episode backstage at the UK Pantomime Association Awards, meeting the organisers, nominees, and some of the winners. So please make sure you subscribe through your favourite podcast app, and make sure you join me, Martin Ballard, next time for episode 50.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.